everyone, welcome to CEC online lecture. The topic of analysis is the English School in International Relations. In this lecture, we shall understand main assumptions of the English School in International Relations. We shall elaborate on the main concepts of the English School in International Relations theory. We shall discuss their relevance with reference to contemporary global issues, as well as analyze strengths and weaknesses of the major ideas presented by the English School perspective in international relations theory. To begin with, when we talk about the English School, it is a very important approach in international relations theory to understand global order. The English School perspective gives us a basis to study IR, to reflect on global history in terms of the framework of social structures of international order. We all know that realism was the major school of thought in the international relations theory, especially after the Second World War. The English School perspective in international relations theory is contrasted with the American and realist approaches, wherein the focus was towards states and the power politics. As we are deliberating the English School, we must also take into account that the English School is often termed as liberal realism. It is also called as international society school. It is also referred as British institutionalist. In the English School perspective, to deliberate further, we must take reference to important academic and research texts. For the English School perspective in international relations, we take reference to the work of Hedley Bull, the name of the book, The Anarchical Society, a study of order in world politics. The book was published in the year 1977. We all know the neo-realist perspective in international relations theory in the work of Kenneth Waltz talked about anarchy, namely lack of overarching authority in international relations. In order to explain the international reality, the realist perspective, while drawing on emphasis towards statism, self-help, survival, it also gave reference to billiard ball metaphor of international politics. The English School perspective in international relations, while highlighting that states are important to account for international reality, however, one cannot ignore shared values, mutual understandings and common interests. Realism focuses towards the power conflicts. The English School, on the contrary to this realist focus, holds that states share a certain common interests. Now there are three key concepts within the English school approach: international system, international society, world society. We shall analyze them one by one with reference to the inputs and definition presented by Hedley Bull. Realism draws attention towards power and conflict in international relations. Liberalism focuses towards cooperative avenues. The English school perspective as an approach gives space to new ideas, a middle way, a middle ground that indeed opens up new horizons to understand international reality, new inputs to enhance understanding of issues of contemporary global reality. The English school perspective gives emphasis towards three key concepts: international system, international society, and world society. We take reference to the definition of each of the three concepts from the work of Hedley Bull. International system is defined by Hedley Bull as being formed when two or more states have sufficient contact between them and have sufficient impact on one another's decision to cause them to behave as parts of a whole. International society exists when a group of like-minded states conceive themselves to be bound by a common set of rules in their relations with one another and share in the working of common institutions. The world society transcends the state system, and the focus in this concept is towards global social identities and arrangements. To add an important remark here, Barry Bozan termed world society as an international community. Now, as we are discussing the main ideas of the English school in international relations, we must highlight that there is a distinction with reference to how an institution and an organization is understood by the English school perspective. Institutions, they are perceived as long-term practices amongst the state. An example here could be diplomacy, law and order, etc. On the contrary, international organizations are secondary institutions. Their effectiveness is contingent upon institutions. Now, this distinction is indeed very important. To elaborate further on this distinction, one must refer to the work by Barry Bozan, From International to World Society, English School Theory and Social Structure of Globalization, Cambridge University Press, 2004. Now, within the English school perspective, there is presence of diverse thoughts. We shall now understand various approaches and perspectives within the English school. And for that, we take reference to the important inputs presented by various academic and research theorists. Haidenmi Suganami opines English school as British institutionalist. Now herein the emphasis and the focus in terms of explaining English school is towards the institutions. Robert Jackson calls it as codes of conduct, and herein the focus is towards the agents. Richard Little and Barry Boson focus and emphasis is towards the structures. Now, as we are deliberating on the English school in international relations, one must also take into account important arguments and debates that the study of ideas in the English school in international relations present before us. An important argument and point of reference for any debate with reference to contemporary global issues is that of this distinction between an international system and an international society. Also drawing reference to the boundaries between the two. Now the debates on these two key aspects have impacted academic deliberations, policy making initiatives, important media debates amongst others. So the English school has indeed made important contribution in terms of understanding of international relations. However, like any perspective, the English school also has its drawbacks. It has been criticized as well. It has been criticized for having a Eurocentric bias in terms of its understanding and explanations given to make sense of global reality. Andrew Linklater, in his very important work, Grand Narratives and International Relations, Global Change, Peace and Security, opines that any grand or meta-narrative in social science is often regressive. The same logic also applies to the English school also, that how in social science any concept is contested. So in this reference, English school perspective in international relations theory has its advantages as well as its own disadvantages. As we are referring to the English school perspective, the English school, which is often called as society of states approach, it gave us threefold method for understanding international outcomes and often seen as a middle way between realism and liberalism. There are three distinct dimensions in international politics, which the various inputs presented by the research and ideas of the theorist for English school in international relations, that is how these three distinct dimensions in international politics operate simultaneously: the international system, international society and world society. The English school perspective, it incorporates the realist views, namely statism, but at the same time it adds more to horizons of learning in international reality by giving space to focus on individuals, norms and values. So as we understand the English school perspective in international relations, it is indeed a pluralistic model. And so, at the same time, because we all know that the international reality is complex, the English school in international relations, in this reference, as the opinion of Robert Jackson says, and we quote that, it is a coherent and advantageous method to decipher the complexity of international reality, because the English school perspective gives emphasis to pluralism. So dear learners, while understanding the English school perspective in international relations, it is very important to trace that how, as a dissenting voice with reference to the predominance of the realist perspective, the English school highlights that how states share a certain common interest. Hedley Bull, whose very important work gave us a new contour to understand international reality, namely the work of Hedley Bull, The Anarchical Society, a study of order in world politics, published in 1977, it pointed out that how we cannot ignore shared values, mutual understandings and common interests. Within this framework, the three key concepts of the English school, the international system, the international society and the world society, there are constant revisions, there are constant academic as well as policy oriented interventions that are being made with reference to the three key concepts. But this very aspect of dynamism of these three concepts, namely international system, international society and the world society, points out that how advantageous it is to have new horizons, new perspective with reference to understanding of the global order. In this framework, the English school perspective has indeed added more with reference to understanding the complex global reality. The important issues, namely the differentiation between an international system and an international society, where does one draw the boundary line between the two, are indeed of great significance. So no doubt English school perspective has made important contributions in international relations theory. However, it has been criticized as well, namely that it has a Eurocentric bias, and most important, that how idealistic and ideals thereof, can they be pragmatic enough with reference to international reality, which is defined by the realist ideas of seeking self-help to ensure survival and duly safeguarding national interests. Dear learners, we hope that the lecture on the English School in International Relations presented to you significant inputs and insight. We hope that you have gained significant inputs from the lecture. Thank you very much.